We all remember the final standoff in the snow. A line of golden-eyed vampires facing a sea of gray cloaks. On the surface, it looks like a classic legal defense. A family gathering character witnesses to save a child. But if you look closer, under the skin of the Twilight lore, you'll see something much darker and far more desperate. Why did covens from the corners of the globe, vampires who haven't spoken to anyone in centuries, suddenly risk annihilation for a family they barely knew? It wasn't just about Bella and Edward's miracle. It was about the ghosts that haunt every immortal soul. Today on Velvet Moon, we're peeling back the romantic gloss of Breaking Dawn to reveal the brutal truth. The gathering wasn't a defense. It was a desperate reunion of victims. It was a mobilization of shared trauma. Let's dive into part 1, the gathering of scars. First, we need to talk about the spark. When the news of Renesmee reached the Volturi, it triggered what I call a biological panic. In the vampire world, there is one law that is absolute: the prohibition of immortal children. These frozen, unteachable toddlers are the stuff of vampire nightmares, not because they're evil, but because they are a walking, screaming exposure risk. But here's the twist. Renesmee isn't an immortal child. The Cullens knew this. Yet, the panic that rippled through the global vampire community was instantaneous. Why? Because the Volturi have used biological safeties as a pretext for genocide for 3,000 years. The moment Alice saw them coming, every nomad and coven leader felt a familiar chill. It wasn't just about protecting a hybrid. It was the realization that if the Volturi can execute a child for the crime of being born, no one is safe. This is where the Cullens played a brilliant, perhaps even manipulative, psychological card. They didn't just ask for help. They presented Renesmee as proof that the Volturi's laws were being used as an excuse to purge any coven that grew too powerful or too unique. They turned a biological anomaly into a symbol of sovereignty. The Romanians, the architecture of fallen kings. To understand why the Romanian coven, Stefan and Vladimir, showed up, we have to look at the ruins of their ego. They aren't just witnesses. They are the original victims of the Volturi's first great purge. Before the Volturi were the keepers of the law, the Romanians were the kings of the world. Think about the psychological weight of 1,500 years of resentment. When Stefan and Vladimir describe their past, they don't talk about laws. They talk about the smell of burning stone and the screams of their brothers. For them, Renesmee is a convenient catalyst. They don't love the Cullens. They don't even particularly care if Renesmee lives. They are there because the Cullens' desperate defense provided the first crack in the Volturi's divine armor in 2 millennia. In this section, we analyze the displacement of grief. Every time Stefan sneers at the Volturi's gray cloaks, he isn't seeing a legal council. He's seeing the executioners who turned his empire into ash. This is a trauma bond in its purest, most toxic form. The enemy of my executioner is my only friend. The Egyptians, the silence of the oppressed. Then we have Amun and the Egyptian coven. Amun's reaction is fascinatingly paranoid. He is a creator, a collector of talents like Benjamin. His trauma is different. It's the trauma of the gilded cage. He knows that the Volturi don't just kill, they assimilate. Amun's fear of Renesmee is actually a fear of visibility. For centuries, he has hidden Benjamin like a forbidden weapon. By coming to Forks, he is exposing his greatest secret to Aro's greed. Why do it? Because he realized that hiding is no longer an option. The Volturi were already coming for the Cullens. Amun knew that if the Cullens fell, the Volturi would have no more rivals left to stop them from coming for Benjamin next. It's a classic case of preemptive survival trauma. He's not there for a child. He's there because the shadows he's been hiding in are finally catching fire. The Denali sisters, the original sin. Let's get personal. If there's any coven that should have executed Renesmee on sight, it's the Denali sisters. Why? Because they've lived through this nightmare before. Their mother, Sasha, was executed by the Volturi for creating an immortal child. Tanya, Kate, and Irina didn't just watch their mother die. They watched their entire world burn because of a child that looked exactly like Renesmee. When Irina saw Renesmee, her reaction wasn't just reporting a crime. It was a post-traumatic flashback. She saw the same trigger that destroyed her mother. But look at Tanya and Kate. Their decision to stand with the Cullens is a fascinating psychological pivot. It's what we call corrective emotional experience. By protecting Renesmee, a child who is not a monster, they are symbolically trying to save their mother. They are trying to rewrite their own history of helplessness. Every hour they spend guarding the Cullens is an act of rebellion against the trauma that has defined them for 1,000 years. They aren't just witnesses. They are seeking a second chance at a trial the Volturi never gave their mother. Garrett, the adventurer's void. And then we have Garrett. Every fandom loves a rogue, but let's look at the void Garrett was trying to fill. Garrett is a nomad. He's lived through the American Revolution. He's seen the birth of a nation, but as a vampire, he's been stagnant. He's the personification of immortal ennui, the crushing boredom of living forever with nothing to believe in. Garrett's attraction to Kate is the catalyst, sure, but his commitment to the cause is ideological. He's the one who challenges the other witnesses, asking them if they've become the Volturi slaves. Garrett represents the anarchist trauma, the fear that in their long lives, they've traded their freedom for a safety that is actually a prison. When he stands in that line, he's not just fighting for a hybrid, he's fighting for the idea that a vampire can still choose their own destiny. He's looking for a reason to exist that is bigger than his next meal. The psychology of sensory proof, consent, and manipulation. In the vampire world, trust is a luxury no one can afford. So, how do you convince a room full of ancient, paranoid killers that a law-breaking hybrid child isn't a death sentence for them all? Oh, you don't use words. You use sensory hijacking. This is where Renesmee's gift becomes the most powerful psychological tool in the Cullens' arsenal. Unlike Edward, who takes thoughts, Renesmee projects them. When she touches a witness's cheek, she isn't just showing them a picture, she is flooding their nervous system with her own biological reality. She shares the warmth of her skin, the rhythm of her heart, and the memory of her birth. Psychologically, this is totalitarian truth. When you feel someone else's memory as if it were your own, you lose the ability to be a skeptic. The witnesses like Zafrina or Senna didn't decide to believe the Cullens, they were biologically forced to. By using Renesmee's touch, the Cullens effectively bypass the witness's conscious defenses. It's a form of consent through sensory overload. They turned a child's innocence into an undeniable, invasive proof that left no room for doubt or for walking away. But the manipulation doesn't stop with the child. Let's look at Edward's role in this gathering. For the first time in immortal history, a massive group of vampires is living in a house with a mind reader who is constantly on. This created what we call the panopticon effect. In a normal alliance, there is always the fear of the traitor in the room. But with Edward there, everyone knew that everyone else was telling the truth. If a nomad was secretly planning to sell the Cullens out to Arrow, Edward would know before the thought was even finished. This transparency is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it allowed for a rapid, unprecedented level of trust. On the other hand, it was a psychological cage. The witnesses were stripped of their privacy. They were forced into a state of radical integrity. You couldn't be a neutral witness in the Cullen house. You were either all in or you were exposed. This forced transparency is what accelerated the formation of the Alliance, turning a loose collection of strangers into a singular, focused military entity. Perhaps the most subtle form of manipulation was the vacuum left by Alice's departure. When Alice and Jasper fled, it created a state of existential panic. The witnesses felt the safety net of the future being ripped away. In this state of high anxiety, people look for a leader to cling to. Carlisle and Edward filled that void perfectly. By presenting a front of calm, moral certainty while their prophet's Alice was missing, they forced the witnesses to choose, flee now and be hunted alone, or stand together and hope for a miracle. The Cullens didn't just ask for help. They created a scenario where fighting was the only psychologically viable option for survival. They framed the conflict not as save our daughter, but as defend our collective right to exist. This is the masterstroke of the gathering. They took the individual traumas we discussed in Chapter 2 and fused them into a collective trauma response. By the time the Volturi arrived, the witnesses weren't fighting for the Cullens. They were fighting for the reality that the Cullens had carefully constructed around them for weeks. The silence before the snow. So, what we're looking at in the Clearing of Forks isn't a happy family reunion. It's a pressure cooker of ancient trauma, weaponized empathy, and forced transparency. The Cullens didn't just find witnesses. They engineered a revolution by tapping into the darkest memories of the vampire world. They took the Romanian's rage, the Denali's grief, and the nomad's existential boredom, and they wove them together using Renesmee's touch and Edward's mind. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Volturi aren't facing a group of lawbreakers. They are facing a psychological mirror of their own tyranny. But here's the terrifying question we have to ask. Is this new alliance any better? If the foundation of this new world orders is built on manipulation and shared trauma, what happens after the snow melts? And more importantly, what did Alice Cullen see that made her truly run away? In Part 2, we're going to dive into the legacy of Renesmee. We'll explore how this alliance permanently broke the power of the Volturi and why the definition of a coven will never be the same again. We'll also look at the darker side of Renesmee as a symbol not of hope, but of an impossible future that might just be another kind of cage. Thanks for watching this deep dive on Velvet Moon. If you think the Cullens were justified in their mental drafting of the witnesses, let me know in the comments. I'll see you in part 2, where the real battle for the future begins.